We've got our political panel now. I'm delighted to have you both in the studio. David Gazzard from DPG Advisory, former Liberal advisor, and Ben Oquist, the Executive Director at the Australia Institute, former Greens advisor. Ben, this statement by Anthony Albanese yesterday, it seemed like it was a bit of a throwaway or even a slip of the tongue in saying, yes, we back that, but now they've really backed it in, this suggestion of an increase in the minimum wage upwards of 5%. Is that a smart thing to do?
Well, I think it is. And in a sense, it brings forward to the headlines the policy debate that we need to have in Australia about what is going wrong with wage growth. That's been one of the Labor Party's central messages, what to do about it. And now we're having the debate, what to do about it. Now, wage growth, in the first half of this century was kind of running at 4%. And over the last, 9 years or so, it's been running at 2%. And really what we're debating now, it's a really important policy debate, is what can be done. And even though unemployment is at record lows and the theory is that that will lift wages, it's not happening. And there does need to be government intervention. And I think we've boiled it down now. Scott Morrison says we don't need to do anything. A strong economy and low unemployment will deliver wage growth. And Anthony Albanese and the Labor Party is saying we need government intervention. And I think what we've learnt over the last 10 years, partly because unions have become weaker, partly because there's been suppression of public sector wage rises, partly because of wage theft, that's what the research is showing, wages aren't growing and you need government intervention. And I think we're boiling down to that and probably bringing it back onto Labor's turf.
Wages last year, the wage price index last year, this year, and forecast for next year, all behind CPI inflation. Well, is it something that will resonate?
Look, I totally get what Anthony Albanese is doing. He's had mistake after mistake after mistake. If this was a mistake, but he's got to double down now, and he's going on the basis that workers out there will say, yeah, wage rise, I'll have a piece of that. I get that. That's on one level. The quantum of the wage rise is where he's screwed up, particularly in an inflationary economy. Now, we've come through COVID. He's got to look every small business in the eye that has just struggled through and say, I'm in favour of a 5.1% increase in wages, despite what the Independent Fair Work Commission says. So this is where that's fine. I get what he's trying to do to double down, to appeal to workers who say, sure, I'll have a 5% increase, but is it responsible? Is it the right way to do it? Is it going to drive inflationary and pressures? Is it a risk to the economy? Undoubtedly is. Everyone's saying that. So you've got to disaggregate the desire for a pay rise, which is legitimate across the workforce, particularly coming out of COVID, where everyone has struggled, the economy struggled, but people have jobs. We're down to 4% unemployment. And also what is economically going to be destructive. And this is where I think the coalition are into this territory where if you stick with them, you know you're not going to be facing a risk. If you go with Anthony Albanese, you are. And that is across the board. There's no doubt about that, Ben. I get what you're trying to do right now, but economists, business, everybody is saying you cannot have wages that are linked to inflationary pressures outside what the Fair Work Commission
Plenty of economists are saying actually the opposite. We need real wage growth. And
of course you need real wage growth.
But if you don't have a minimum wage that keeps up with inflation, you're not having real wage growth. You're having a real wage cut. So really he's stating the obvious, that at the very least, and for the poorest Australians...
Do you think it was a slip-up, the initial suggestion, because it was in response to a question at the news conference? You'd think for a big statement like this, you'd come out, Jim Chalmers and, your Shadow Treasurer, and make a big fanfare of it.
Let's be clear. I mean, the independent umpire is still going to set what the wage growth is, but just because you have an independent umpire doesn't mean you can't be suggesting to the umpire what the decision should be. Governments all the time make submissions to the Fair Work Commission. Here's a stat for you. The Fair Work Commission only twice in the last 20 years hasn't delivered a minimum wage equivalent to the CPI. We need to increase wage growth, real wage growth. So it would be unusual for wages not to keep up with inflation. And I think it is a cut-through line when you say that you're arguing for a $1 increase an hour for somebody on $20 an hour,
But that's not what we're arguing. This is not what we're arguing.
We are arguing this.
And this is why Anthony Albanese won't repeat what he said yesterday. And this is why a succession of the shadow ministers again have had to come out and correct what he said. Oh no, what he was really saying was. So everybody knows this, right? This was a mistake. He made it up on the fly. You get a real wage increase this year. Inflation goes to 7%, driven by some external factor like the war in Ukraine or supply chain issues. You're going to have a 7%, a 10%.
When are we going to have...
This is where it gets irresponsible. You can't have wage growth linked only to inflation.
It wasn't saying only to inflation. You need productivity rises, and you can have wage growth if you have productivity rises. The reality is wage growth has been stubbornly low. And here's the thing. This is what's changed in economics globally. We now know that wage growth is not only bad for workers, low wage growth is not only bad for workers, it's bad for the economy overall.
What do you expect tonight? Obviously, we've got the final debate, final leaders' debate tonight. This is the business end, David, and you've been through many of these. What would you be saying to the Prime Minister tonight? I mean, in his war room before he goes in?
Everything now is getting down to the final day message. I mean, this is where you've got a huge cohort of undecided voters. They've sat and waited and watched. The fact that we've argued now for the last 5 minutes about what Anthony Albanese actually meant, and no, really, says Ben, it was responsible, and I'm saying it wasn't responsible. This is where the debate will go. It will be seeking to define the opposition from the government's point of view as a risk, and Anthony Albanese saying you can have all things, all men can have all things. I'm going to make it rain. So,
will it be as fiery as the last debate? We had quite a bit of civility in the first one, but then it sort of erupted on Sunday.
Yeah, look, I doubt it.
What would you say tonight?
I doubt it, but I think that goes to the format. I think, it probably needs to have a moderator that stands between the two as a starting point. So I'm not quite sure how Channel 9 got to that particular format, but you don't. No party really wants it degenerating into an open brawl on set.
That doesn't help anyone, does it?
Oh, look, I've enjoyed.
What would you expect for the final one?
I've enjoyed all the debates, and they were very different. But they're a contest of ideas. They're willing. They're engaging. They're more detailed discussions on policy than we sometimes see elsewhere in the election campaign. I think we should be having more. No,
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. But in terms of if you're the marketing person behind both leaders, you're saying maybe ease up on the yelling and the interrupting and the talking over. That's obvious, isn't it?
Of course, but if you're going to get talked over, you've got to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, so I agree with Ben on that.
You've got to give as good as you can get. I mean, but one final thing, no offence to Sky, we do need one on the national broadcaster and on the ABC. I think Albo will be comfortable debating low wage growth and cost of living. And that's what has been central to their campaign. So, I mean, you say he's made a gaffe. On the other hand, we are debating cost of living and low wage growth, and they've been the central Labor messages throughout this campaign.
You said you need it. You're not going to get it, though, unfortunately. So, yeah, I agree with you. More debates, the merrier. Let the sun shine.
Yep.
Ben, David, great to see you both. We will meet again next week, just a few days out from Election Day. Thanks, gentlemen.